Bullies ripped her hoodie at lunch. Her knee knocked him out cold. Maya Restrepo pulled her oversized grey hoodie tighter as she navigated Jefferson High's crowded hallways. At 17, she stood barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, with dark hair braided down her back and warm brown eyes that revealed nothing. 3 months had passed since her family moved from Medellin, Colombia, to this suburban American town, and Maya still felt like she didn't belong. The morning bell rang as students rushed to class. Maya kept her head down, weaving between laughing teenagers who barely acknowledged her existence. She preferred it that way. Back in Colombia, her father had taught her that sometimes the greatest strength came from being underestimated. If only they knew, she thought, as she slipped into advanced biology and took her usual back corner seat. Maya's classmates saw a quiet immigrant girl with a slight accent. They had no idea she had been training in Muay Thai since age 8, that her father Carlos had been a professional fighter in Colombia, or that she could drop a grown man with a single knee strike. But there were reasons she kept those skills hidden. Her father had made her promise when they left Colombia that she would focus on her studies, on building a new life. Violence had taken too much from their family already. Her older brother Diego had gotten involved with the wrong people, using his fighting skills for money in underground matches, until one night he never came home. The memory of her mother's tears and her father's broken spirit kept Maya's hands folded quietly in her lap, no matter how badly others treated her. Tyler Kowalski noticed Maya on her second week at Jefferson High. At 18, he stood 6 feet 2 inches tall with broad shoulders built from years of varsity football. His sandy brown hair was always perfectly styled, his clothes expensive, and he walked the halls with his crew following like loyal dogs. Tyler had ruled Jefferson High's social hierarchy since sophomore year, and he had a talent for identifying weakness in others. "Look what we have here," Tyler announced one Tuesday morning as Maya passed his locker. His voice carried that particular tone that made other students slow down to watch. "Little Columbia thinks she can just walk around here like she belongs." Maya kept walking, her jaw clenched but her face neutral. She had learned early that bullies fed on reactions. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Tyler called out, catching up with her. His friend Brandon Mills, a stocky redhead with a cruel smile, appeared on Maya's other side, boxing her against the lockers. "You too good to answer when someone talks to you." "I don't want any trouble," Maya said quietly, her accent making the words sound softer than intended. "I just want to get to class." Tyler laughed harshly. "You hear that, Brandon? She doesn't want any trouble. That's real polite." He leaned closer. "But see, this is our school, and we don't like stuck-up immigrants who think they're better than everyone else." The hallway quieted as more students stopped to watch. Maya's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to remain still. "Just walk away," she told herself. "Dad always said there's no honor in fighting someone who doesn't understand what they're asking for." "Please move," Maya said, looking directly at Tyler. "I don't want to be late." Something flickered in Tyler's eyes at her calm response. He had expected tears, pleading, maybe anger. Instead, he saw something that looked almost like pity. The realization that this small girl wasn't afraid of him made his face flush with embarrassment and rage. "You think you're tough." Tyler stepped closer, towering over Maya's small frame. "You think because you come from some crime-ridden hellhole, you're harder than us." The casual racism stung, but Maya had heard worse. What bothered her more was how other students watched with detached interest. No one stepped forward to intervene. This was entertainment to them. "I think you should let me pass," Maya said, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. Tyler's hand shot out and shoved Maya's shoulder, sending her stumbling back against the lockers with a metallic clang. "I think you should learn some respect." For just a moment, Maya's muscles tensed with trained reflexes. Her father's voice echoed, "Step back with your right foot, create distance, drive the knee up and through." The technique was so ingrained she could feel her body wanting to move, to respond with devastating efficiency. Instead, she straightened her hoodie and picked up her backpack. "Okay," she said simply, and walked away. Behind her, she heard Tyler's frustrated curse and Brandon's disappointed laugh. Maya made it to chemistry class with 30 seconds to spare, but Tyler Kowalski wasn't finished with her. Over the following weeks, the harassment escalated with methodical cruelty. Tyler and his friends seemed to take Maya's refusal to fight back as both challenge and insult. They blocked her path in hallways, knocked books from her hands, scattered homework assignments, and made loud comments about illegal immigrants whenever she passed. Brandon Mills proved particularly creative. He discovered Maya's locker combination and began leaving nasty notes inside. "Go back where you came from. Nobody wants you here. Your English sucks." Maya would find these messages folded between textbooks, each designed to chip away at her confidence. The psychological pressure was harder than any physical confrontation would have been. Maya found herself taking circuitous routes to avoid Tyler's usual haunts. She started eating lunch in the library instead of the cafeteria, claiming she needed to study when really she wanted to avoid public humiliation. Jessica Park, a blonde girl with perfectly applied makeup and a smile that never reached her eyes, led the verbal attacks with surgical precision. "Maya, is it true that girls in Colombia have to fight each other for food?" she would ask in front of classmates, voice dripping with false concern. "I'm just wondering because you always look so serious. Are you hungry? Should we start a charity drive?" The worst part was how other students reacted. Most simply looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to get involved. A few laughed along, either from genuine amusement or desperate desire to avoid becoming targets themselves. Even teachers seemed determined to ignore what was happening. Maya began to dread school with surprising intensity. She had faced real danger in Colombia, but there was something uniquely exhausting about this constant, low-level cruelty. It wore at her like water slowly eroding stone. 3 weeks into the harassment campaign, Maya was leaving AP Literature when Tyler appeared at her elbow. "You know what I don't understand about you, Columbia?" Tyler's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more threatening. "You just take everything we dish out like you're some kind of martyr. It's weird. Most people would have snapped by now." Maya kept walking, breathing carefully controlled. "I don't see the point in fighting." "No?" Tyler's laugh was genuinely curious. "See, I think you're just a coward. I think underneath that mysterious foreign girl act, you're just another scared little mouse who knows she can't handle what happens if she pushes back." They had reached Maya's locker, and she began working the combination with steady fingers. Behind her, she could feel Tyler's presence like heat from a furnace. "My dad says people like you come here thinking you can just take advantage of American generosity," Tyler continued, voice getting louder to attract attention. "Says you probably snuck across the border in some truck, and now you think you deserve to be in classes with real Americans." Maya's hands stilled on her locker door. The casual cruelty of his assumptions about her family's legal immigration, his reduction of her identity to racist stereotypes, finally hit something deeper than her patience could cover. "Your dad sounds like an ignorant man," she said quietly, not turning around. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Tyler's face flushed red at the insult to his father. "What did you just say to me?" Maya closed her locker and turned to face him, brown eyes meeting his with steady calm. "I said your father sounds ignorant. Anyone who teaches their son to judge people based on where they come from instead of who they are. That's ignorance." Tyler seemed genuinely shocked, that the quiet girl had finally pushed back. Then his expression darkened with rage that made other students instinctively step away. "You little bitch," he growled, voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "And you have no idea who you're messing with," Maya replied, voice still calm, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. Something in her tone made Tyler hesitate for just a second, but then Brandon Mills appeared beside him, and Jessica Park materialized with her phone out, ready to record whatever happened next. "We'll see about that," Tyler said, stepping so close that Maya had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Tomorrow, lunch period, you and me are going to settle this once and for all." Maya nodded once, expression unreadable. "Okay." That night, Maya sat in her family's small apartment kitchen, staring at untouched homework while her father prepared dinner. Carlos Restrepo moved with the careful economy of motion that marked former fighters, hands quick and precise as he chopped vegetables. At 45, he still carried himself with the controlled power that had made him a champion in Colombia's Muay Thai circuits. "Mija, you've been quiet tonight," Carlos observed without looking up. "Something troubling you at school?" Maya considered telling him about Tyler, about the weeks of harassment and tomorrow's promised confrontation, but she could see her father's hands, how they moved with such practiced skill, and remembered why they had left Colombia. Her brother Diego had been just as skilled, just as strong, and it had led him down a path that destroyed their family. "Just thinking about a test tomorrow," Maya lied, guilt sitting heavy in her stomach. Carlos nodded, but continued watching her with keen observation. "You know, Mija, your brother used to get that same look when he was wrestling with a problem he thought he had to solve alone." The mention of Diego made Maya's chest tighten. Her older brother had been her hero growing up, the one who first taught her basic techniques. Diego had been strong, fearless, everything Maya thought she wanted to be, until that strength became a weapon that attracted the wrong kind of attention. "I remember," Maya said quietly. "Diego thought his strength was meant for fighting," Carlos continued, moving to the stove. "He believed that because he could win, he should win. That power was meant to be used." Carlos paused. "It took me too long to teach him that real strength is knowing when not to fight." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "What if someone doesn't give you a choice?" Carlos turned to look at her directly, dark eyes serious. "There is always a choice, Mija, but sometimes all the choices are hard ones." He moved to sit across from her. "Is someone at school giving you trouble?" Maya met her father's gaze and saw not just concern, but understanding. "There's a boy who's been making things difficult. He says things about our family, about Colombia, about me." Carlos nodded slowly. "And what do you want to do about this boy?" Maya thought about Tyler's sneering face, about Brandon's cruel notes, about Jessica's calculated insults. She thought about how other students looked through her like she didn't exist, how teachers pretended not to see what was happening. "I want him to stop," Maya said finally. "And if he won't stop when you ask him to?" Maya met her father's eyes, seeing her own determination reflected there. "Then I want him to understand that he picked the wrong person to mess with." Carlos was quiet for a long moment, studying his daughter's face. Then he stood and moved to a cabinet high above their refrigerator, reaching behind boxes to pull out a small wooden case Maya hadn't seen in months. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, was his old competition mouthguard and hand wraps. "Your brother's mistake was not that he fought," Carlos said, running his fingers over the worn leather. "His mistake was that he fought for the wrong reasons, for money, for reputation, for pride." He looked up at Maya. "But sometimes, Mija, we fight because it's the only way to protect something important. Sometimes we fight not because we want to hurt someone, but because we need them to understand that they cannot hurt us." Maya felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening after being locked for too long. "If this boy will not listen to words," Carlos continued, "then perhaps he needs a different kind of education. But you must promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that when it's over, it's over. No revenge, no pride, no proving points. You teach him what he needs to learn, and then you walk away." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of what her father was saying. "I promise." Carlos smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him in weeks. "Then let's make sure you're ready to keep that promise." They spent the next hour reviewing techniques Maya hadn't practiced in months. Her body remembered the movements with startling clarity, the precise timing of a knee strike, the way to generate power from her hips and core, the importance of distance and positioning. Carlos watched with the critical eye of a former champion. "Remember," he said as they finished, "you are not trying to destroy him. You are teaching him respect. There is a difference." The next morning, Maya walked into Jefferson High with different energy. She wore the same oversized hoodie, carried the same worn backpack, but something fundamental had changed in how she moved through the hallways. Several students noticed the difference without being able to identify what it was: a straightness to her spine, a steadiness to her gaze. Tyler was waiting at her locker, surrounded by his usual crew and a growing crowd who had heard about the promised confrontation. Word had spread through the school's social networks with the efficiency that only teenage gossip could achieve. By the time Maya arrived, there were at least 30 students clustered in the hallway. "Well, well," Tyler announced loudly as Maya approached. "Look who decided to show up. I was starting to think you chickened out and ran back to Mexico." "Colombia," Maya corrected quietly, working her locker combination. "And I don't run from bullies." The crowd stirred at her words, sensing something different about Maya's demeanor. Jessica Park pushed closer, phone already recording. Brandon Mills cracked his knuckles with theatrical menace. Tyler himself seemed surprised by Maya's calm confidence. "We'll see about that," Tyler said, grabbing Maya's shoulder and spinning her around. "You think you can disrespect me and my family and just walk away?" Maya looked up at him with those same steady brown eyes, but now Tyler could see something in them that made him instinctively take a half step backward. "I think you should take your hand off me." There was something in her voice, some quality of absolute certainty that sent a chill through the watching crowd. Tyler felt it too, but his pride and the pressure of performing for his audience drove him forward. "Or what?" Tyler demanded, tightening his grip. "What are you going to do about it, little girl?" Maya's voice remained calm, almost conversational. "I'm going to ask you one more time to let me go." Tyler laughed, the sound harsh and forced. "And if I don't? Then you're going to learn something new about respect." The hallway had grown completely silent, except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Tyler looked around at the watching faces, all waiting to see how he would handle this unexpected resistance. "You know what?" Tyler said, voice getting louder as his anger built. "I'm tired of your attitude. I'm tired of you walking around here like you own the place. Time someone taught you how things work in America." His hand moved from Maya's shoulder to grab the front of her hoodie, bunching the fabric in his fist. "Maybe you need to learn that immigrants don't get to talk back to—" Tyler never finished the sentence. Maya's response was so fast that most watching students missed the actual technique. One moment Tyler was grabbing her hoodie and talking about teaching her a lesson. The next moment he was doubled over, gasping for air, his face rapidly turning an alarming shade of red. What Maya had done was textbook perfect. She had grabbed Tyler's wrist with both hands, stepped back to create distance, and driven her knee up into his solar plexus with precisely calculated force. Not enough to cause serious injury, but more than enough to completely incapacitate him for several very long, very public minutes. The crowd erupted in shocked gasps and excited whispers. Brandon Mills stood frozen, mouth hanging open as he watched his seemingly invincible leader struggle to breathe. Jessica Park's phone captured every second of Tyler's humiliation. Maya released Tyler's wrist and took another step back, giving him space to recover while keeping herself ready for any continued aggression. Her father's training was evident in every movement, controlled, precise, never using more force than necessary. "Are you okay?" Maya asked Tyler, voice showing genuine concern despite what had just happened. Tyler managed to straighten up partially, face still flushed and breathing labored. The rage in his eyes was unmistakable, but so was something else, the dawning realization that he had severely miscalculated his opponent. You hit me," Tyler wheezed, voice barely audible. "You grabbed me," Maya replied simply. "I defended myself." "I'm going to destroy you," Tyler said, voice getting stronger as his breathing normalized. "You have no idea what you just started." Maya's expression remained calm, but something shifted in her posture that made several students instinctively step backward. "I know exactly what I started. The question is, do you know when to stop?" Tyler looked around at the watching crowd, seeing his humiliation reflected in their shocked faces. 3 months of careful bullying, of establishing his dominance over the quiet immigrant girl, had been destroyed in seconds. "This isn't over," Tyler snarled, pushing past Maya toward the exit. But everyone watching could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Brandon Mills followed his leader without a word, shooting Maya a look that mixed fear with newfound respect. Jessica Park lowered her phone, staring at Maya like she was seeing her for the first time. The crowd began to disperse reluctantly, students chattering excitedly about what they had witnessed. Maya calmly finished gathering her books from her locker, hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. Word of the hallway confrontation spread through Jefferson High with the speed of wildfire. By lunch period, everyone knew that quiet Maya Restrepo had dropped Tyler Kowalski with a single knee strike, and the story grew more dramatic with each retelling. Maya ate her lunch in the library as usual, but she was far from alone. Several students found excuses to walk past her table, sneaking glances at the girl who had humiliated the school's biggest bully. A few even approached her directly, suddenly eager to be friendly. "That was amazing what you did to Tyler," said a sophomore named Lisa, sliding uninvited into the chair across from Maya. "I can't believe you knew karate, or whatever that was." "Muay Thai," Maya corrected quietly, "and I don't like hurting people." "But he totally deserved it," Lisa insisted. "Tyler's been a jerk to everyone for years. Someone needed to put him in his place." Maya closed her textbook and looked directly at Lisa. "Where were you when he was harassing me for the past 3 weeks?" Lisa's enthusiasm faltered. I wanted to say something, but it was easier to pretend you didn't see it," Maya finished, "until I handled it myself." The uncomfortable truth in Maya's words sent Lisa away quickly, but she wasn't the last student to approach. Maya found herself fielding a constant stream of questions and comments, most from people who had never spoken to her before, but suddenly wanted to be associated with her newfound reputation. Tyler himself was notably absent from the cafeteria, though reports filtered back that he was in the nurse's office claiming stomach flu. Maya knew he was probably fine physically. She had been careful to use just enough force to make her point without causing real damage, but his pride would take much longer to heal. It was after her last class, as Maya was walking toward the school's exit, that Tyler finally made his move for revenge. She saw him coming from across the parking lot, flanked by Brandon Mills and 2 other football players she didn't recognize. Tyler's face was set in grim determination, his earlier humiliation having clearly festered into something darker. Maya stopped walking and let them approach, her backpack hanging loose from one shoulder and her posture relaxed but ready. Several other students noticed the developing confrontation and began to gather at a safe distance. "You think you're real tough, don't you?" Tyler called out when he was still 20 feet away. "You think one lucky shot makes you some kind of badass?" Maya said nothing, simply watching as the four boys spread out in a loose semicircle around her. She could see the anger in Tyler's eyes, but also something else, a desperate need to restore his reputation. "See, the thing is," Tyler continued, moving closer, "I wasn't ready for you this morning. I was trying to be nice, trying to teach you a lesson without really hurting you." His voice took on a cruel edge. "But you want to play rough? We can play rough." Brandon Mills stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with renewed confidence. 4-on-1 seems about right for someone who fights dirty." Maya felt her father's training kick in, her mind automatically assessing distances, angles, potential escape routes. But she also remembered his words about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. 4 opponents was beyond even her considerable skills. "I don't want to fight all of you," Maya said clearly, her voice carrying to the watching students. "This should be between Tyler and me." Tyler laughed harshly. "You don't get to make the rules anymore, Columbia. You want to embarrass me in front of the whole school? Now you get to see what happens when you mess with people who have friends." But as Maya prepared to try to break through their circle and run, something unexpected happened. "Hey!" a voice called from across the parking lot. "What's going on over here?" Everyone turned to see Marcus Washington, a senior who played varsity basketball and commanded respect throughout the school, walking toward them with several teammates. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with easy confidence. Tyler's confident expression faltered slightly. "Nothing that concerns you, Washington. Just settling some business with the new girl." Marcus looked at the 4 boys surrounding Maya, then at the crowd of students watching from a safe distance, and his expression hardened. "Looks to me like 4 guys trying to jump one girl. That's not business, that's cowardice." "She started it," Brandon Mills protested. "She attacked Tyler this morning." "I heard about that," Marcus replied, voice carrying across the parking lot. "I heard Tyler grabbed her and she defended herself. Now it looks like you boys are planning some payback." He stepped closer, his basketball teammates flanking him. "That's not how real men handle their problems." Tyler's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. "This isn't your fight, Marcus. When I see 4 guys ganging up on a girl half their size, it becomes my fight," Marcus replied steadily. "You want to settle something with Maya? Do it one-on-one like a man, or walk away and save what's left of your reputation." The tension in the parking lot was thick. Tyler looked around at the watching faces, seeing his humiliation multiply as Marcus's intervention highlighted the cowardly nature of his planned revenge. Maya watched this development with a mixture of gratitude and frustration. She appreciated Marcus's intervention, but part of her wanted to handle this herself. At the same time, her father's voice echoed, "Sometimes the strongest choice is accepting help when it's offered." "Fine," Tyler said finally, voice tight with suppressed rage. "You want one-on-one? We'll do one-on-one." He looked directly at Maya, eyes blazing with fury. "You and me, right now, no interference." Marcus started to object, but Maya held up a hand to stop him. "Thank you," she said to Marcus, voice sincere. "But this is something I need to finish myself." Marcus studied her face for a moment, seeing something there that convinced him to step back. "Your choice," he said. "But if this turns into anything more than a fair fight, I'm stepping in." Maya nodded her understanding, then turned to face Tyler. The crowd had grown larger, drawn by the prospect of witnessing what promised to be an epic confrontation. Students pulled out phones to record what they sensed would be a defining moment in Jefferson High's social hierarchy. Tyler stripped off his jacket and handed it to Brandon, movements sharp with anger and adrenaline. At 6 feet 2 inches and 200 pounds, he dwarfed Maya's small frame, and the contrast was even more dramatic now. Last chance to walk away, Tyler said, rolling his shoulders and settling into what he probably thought was a fighting stance. I'm not going to go easy on you just because you're a girl. Maya pulled off her oversized hoodie, revealing a fitted t-shirt that showed the lean muscle definition her baggy clothes had hidden. Several students gasped at the transformation. Without the hoodie, Maya looked like a completely different person. Her shoulders were broader than expected, her arms corded with muscle, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in her own body. I wouldn't want you to, Maya replied, voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her system. Tyler rushed forward immediately, relying on his size and aggression to overwhelm her before she could use whatever technique had caught him off guard that morning. His attack was clumsy, but powerful, driven by months of accumulated rage and humiliation. Maya moved like water flowing around a rock. She slipped Tyler's wild swing by inches, her footwork carrying her to his left side, while her hands came up in the classic Muay Thai guard her father had drilled into her since childhood. Tyler's momentum carried him past her, and Maya's elbow found his ribs with surgical precision. Tyler stumbled, more surprised than hurt, and spun to face her again. This time he was more cautious, beginning to understand that his opponent possessed skills he had never encountered. "Come on, Tyler!" Brandon Mills shouted from the sidelines. "She's half your size!" Tyler feinted with his left hand and threw a powerful right cross that would have dropped most opponents. Maya leaned back just enough for the punch to whistle past her chin, then stepped forward and drove her knee toward Tyler's midsection. This time, Tyler was ready for the technique. He caught Maya's leg with both hands and grinned triumphantly, thinking he had neutralized her main weapon. Maya's father had taught her what to do when an opponent caught her kick. She pushed off with her planted foot and spun in Tyler's grip, her free leg whipping around to catch him in the side of the head with a devastating heel kick. Tyler's grip on her caught leg became a liability as the rotational force of her technique used his own hold against him. Tyler released her leg and staggered backward, eyes unfocused and balance compromised. The crowd gasped at the technique's fluid beauty and obvious effectiveness. Maya landed smoothly on both feet, already moving to maintain the perfect distance. "This is insane," someone whispered in the crowd. "She's like a professional fighter or something." Tyler shook his head to clear it, his respect for Maya's abilities growing along with his frustration. He had expected to dominate her through size and aggression, but instead found himself being systematically outclassed. "You want to keep going?" Maya asked, breathing steady despite the intensity of their exchange. "Or are we finished here?" Tyler's answer was to charge forward again, this time trying to use his wrestling background to take Maya to the ground where his size advantage would be more meaningful. He managed to wrap his arms around her waist and drive forward, hoping to slam her down onto the asphalt. Maya's response demonstrated why Muay Thai was called the art of 8 limbs. As Tyler lifted her off the ground, Maya grabbed the back of his head with both hands and drove her knee up into his face. The technique, called a flying knee, was one of the most devastating strikes in Muay Thai when executed properly. Maya's execution was flawless. Tyler's head snapped back from the impact, blood streaming from his nose as he dropped Maya and stumbled backward. The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations and gasps of sympathy. Tyler's face was a mask of blood and confusion as he tried to understand what had just happened. Maya landed lightly on her feet and immediately moved back to create distance, hands up and ready, but her expression showing no malice or satisfaction. This wasn't about hurting Tyler, it was about teaching him a lesson he would never forget. "It's over," Maya said clearly, voice carrying to everyone watching. "You're done." Tyler wiped blood from his nose and stared at it with the dazed expression of someone who had never been truly hurt in a fight before. The reality of his situation was beginning to penetrate his shock. He had been completely outclassed by someone half his size, and it had happened in front of half the school. "I'm not done," Tyler said, but his voice lacked conviction. He could taste blood, could feel his nose beginning to swell, and every instinct he possessed was screaming at him to stop fighting someone who was clearly out of his league. Maya saw the uncertainty in his eyes and pressed her advantage. "Yes, you are," she said, stepping forward with controlled confidence. "You can keep fighting and get hurt worse, or you can accept that you picked the wrong person to mess with and walk away with whatever dignity you have left." The parking lot had grown completely silent, except for the sound of Tyler's labored breathing and distant traffic. Everyone watching seemed to understand that they were witnessing something significant, a shift in the social order that would ripple through Jefferson High for months to come. Tyler looked around at the crowd, seeing his humiliation reflected in their shocked faces. His friends stood frozen, unable to help him and unwilling to risk becoming Maya's next target. Marcus Washington watched with the neutral expression of someone who had seen justice served. "This isn't over," Tyler said finally, but everyone could hear that it was an empty threat. "Yes, it is," Maya replied with absolute certainty. "You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave all the other kids you pick on alone. And you're going to think very carefully before you decide to grab someone without their permission again." Tyler opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus Washington stepped forward slightly, his presence serving as a reminder that Maya wasn't without allies anymore. "She's right, Tyler," Marcus said quietly. "You're done here. Go get your nose looked at before it gets worse." Tyler finally seemed to understand that he had lost more than just a fight. His reputation, his social dominance, his ability to intimidate others through physical presence, all of it had been shattered in the space of a few minutes by someone he had dismissed as weak and helpless. He turned and walked toward the school building without another word, blood still dripping from his nose and his shoulders hunched in defeat. Brandon Mills and the other football players followed reluctantly, shooting nervous glances back at Maya. The crowd began to disperse slowly, students chattering excitedly about what they had witnessed. Maya pulled her hoodie back on and shouldered her backpack, trying to return to the anonymity she had lost forever. "That was incredible," Marcus said, approaching her with obvious respect. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "My father taught me," Maya replied simply. "He was a professional fighter in Colombia." Marcus nodded, understanding something about the weight of family expectations and inherited skills. "You handled that perfectly. Tyler needed to learn that lesson, and you taught it to him without going too far." Maya looked toward the school building where Tyler had disappeared, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and regret. "I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to understand." "Trust me," Marcus said with a slight smile. "He understands now, and so does everyone else." Over the following days, the transformation in Maya's social status was dramatic and immediate. Students who had ignored her for months suddenly knew her name, nodded respectfully when she passed in the hallways, and made room for her at lunch tables. The video of her fight with Tyler spread through social media and made her something of a local celebrity. But perhaps more importantly, the bullying stopped completely, not just against Maya, but against other vulnerable students throughout the school. Tyler's defeat had sent a clear message that actions had consequences. Tyler himself had become a different person. His nose healed quickly, but his ego took much longer to recover. He moved through school like a ghost of his former self, no longer commanding attention or respect through intimidation. 3 weeks after their confrontation, Maya was leaving school when she found Tyler waiting by her locker, alone and clearly nervous. "I wanted to say something to you," Tyler said, voice lacking any of its former arrogance. Maya waited, saying nothing. "I was wrong," Tyler continued, the words coming slowly as if each one was difficult to say. "About you, about the things I said about your family, about everything." Maya studied his face, seeing genuine remorse where once there had been only cruel confidence. "Why?" she asked simply. Tyler looked down at his hands. "Because I was angry about stupid stuff at home, and I took it out on you because I thought you were an easy target, because I was a coward who could only feel strong by making other people feel weak." The admission hung in the air between them. Maya could see that the words cost him something significant to say. "And," Maya prompted. "And I'm sorry," Tyler said, finally meeting her eyes. "I know that doesn't fix what I did, but I wanted you to know that I understand why you had to stop me." Maya was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her father's words about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. "Thank you for saying that." Tyler nodded and turned to walk away, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad someone finally taught me that lesson, even if it had to be the hard way." Maya watched him go, feeling something shift inside her chest like a weight being lifted. The cycle of violence and revenge that had destroyed her brother's life didn't have to continue. Sometimes people could learn and change, even bullies who seemed beyond redemption. That evening, Maya sat at her family's kitchen table, helping her father prepare dinner, just as she had on countless nights before. But everything felt different now, lighter somehow, as if she had finally found the balance between strength and restraint that her father had been trying to teach her. "So," Carlos said as he seasoned their meal, "I heard from Mrs. Rodriguez that something interesting happened at school today." Maya smiled, knowing that news traveled fast in their small immigrant community. Tyler apologized. Carlos nodded approvingly. "That takes courage, for him to admit he was wrong and for you to accept his apology." "You always said that real strength means knowing when not to fight," Maya said, "but you never told me that it also means knowing when to stop fighting." Carlos looked at his daughter with obvious pride. "Some lessons can only be learned through experience, Mija. You had to find that balance yourself." Maya thought about Tyler's defeat, about the fear and respect she now saw in other students' eyes, about the responsibility that came with having skills others didn't possess. "Do you think Diego could have learned that lesson if he'd had more time?" Carlos was quiet for a moment, hands still on the cooking utensils. "I think Diego had the same strength you do, the same heart. But he lived in a different world, with different choices." He turned to face Maya directly. "You have something he didn't have. You have the chance to use your strength to protect people instead of destroying them." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of that responsibility. She thought about Marcus Washington's intervention, about the other students who now looked to her as someone who would stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Her victory over Tyler hadn't just been about stopping a bully, it had been about showing everyone, including herself, that strength without compassion was just another form of weakness. The next morning, Maya walked into Jefferson High School with her head held high, no longer hiding behind oversized hoodies or trying to blend into the background. She had learned that respect couldn't be earned through invisibility, that sometimes standing up for yourself meant accepting the responsibility that came with being strong enough to make a difference. As she moved through the hallways, Maya noticed things she had missed before. A freshman being hassled by older students, a girl sitting alone with tears in her eyes, a boy whose books had been scattered across the floor while nearby students pretended not to see. Maya had spent months being invisible, hoping that if she didn't draw attention to herself, she could avoid becoming a target. Now she understood that her father's lessons about strength and restraint weren't just about fighting. They were about choosing when to act and when to stand aside, when to help and when to let others solve their own problems. Tyler Kowalski had taught her something valuable, even if he hadn't meant to. That the world was full of people who would test your boundaries, who would push until you pushed back. But Maya had taught him something valuable in return, that strength without wisdom was just another form of weakness, and that everyone, no matter how small or quiet or different, deserved to be treated with basic human dignity. The scars of their confrontation would fade, but the lessons they had learned from each other would last much longer. Maya had found her voice and her place in a world that had initially seemed hostile and unwelcoming. Tyler had learned that actions have consequences and that true strength comes from building others up rather than tearing them down. And in the end, both of them had discovered that sometimes the most important battles aren't won through violence, but through the courage to change, to grow, and to become better than the people they used to be.